Bochan is a pathetic edgelord loser who was cursed by a witch, making anything he touches perish instantly. However, everything changed when he met a maid with a godly dump truck. Now he searches for a way to break his curse so he can clap that level 10 G at. But before that, alone in his desolate mansion, Bochan writes a letter to his parents, informing them that he is still the same pathetic wanker he was years ago. He laments how the curse is still in full effect, meaning anything he touches will surely die. As Bochan finishes his letter, he recalls how he once lived with his parents and countless servants, but all that changed when everyone became fearful of his curse. Just as Bochan is about to jam to some sad Lana Del Rey songs, his maid Alice arrives, lifting his spirits and the snake that rests between his legs. As the two arrive in the garden, so Bochan can touch grass, Alice asks if he is really going to send that absolute show of a letter to his parents. Bochan then admits he was just practicing and then muses about Alice, a mysterious woman who has no problem getting close to him. Knowing he has been a desperate cherry boy all his life, Alice delights in riling him up with her fatherless acts. In the present, as Bochan hunches his shoulders in dejection, Alice lifts her skirt, flashing those mighty fishnets. Flabbergasted at the sight of her godly thighs, Bochan tells Alice to lay off his meat. However, instead of backing down, Alice tells Bochan that thick thighs save lives, so he's welcome. Bochan expresses to Alice that he doesn't want to lose her, as there aren't just enough fatherless maids around the town. But like always, Alice ignores Bochan and goes for a double hit by placing a biscuit between her lips, taunting him to take the cookie from her. Shyly but eagerly, Bochan plays along until Alice tells him that they just had an indirect kiss. That does it for the poor lad as he explodes with thirst. After being hit by post-nut clarity, Bochan thinks about how his life got ruined when a witch placed a curse on him at the tender age of 5. Since then, Bochan was forced to live a life of solitary. Feeling frustrated, he thinks about how everything would have been different had he been able to find a cure to break free of this curse. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a butterfly flutters toward Bochan, causing him to accidentally touch the tree next to him, and falls before Bochan's eyes. As Bochan lies on the ground, Alice arrives ready to sandwich Bochan between her thunder thighs. However, Bochan quickly stands and reprimands Alice for harassing him. Alice tells Bochan that she's going to get smashed patriarchy by harassing her male employer. In the end, all poor Bochan can do is sigh. Turns out, Alice is the only daughter of the head maid at his family's residence, and because of that, Bochan has known the girl since his childhood. Seeing Bochan lost in his thoughts, Alice once again teases him by lifting up her skirt. Getting her desired reaction, Alice tells Bochan that she deserves a raise from saving him from the male loneliness epidemic. The next day, Alice brings Bochan food when she notices how he doesn't eat that much. When she questions Bochan about the subject, he reveals that one can always be thinner, but better. Hearing this, Alice reminds Bochan that he is not Patrick Bateman and should start taking his schizo pills. Sighing, Bochan then reveals that he has a difficult relationship with food as ever since he got cursed. Mealtimes absolutely sucked. Understanding Bochan's trauma with food, Alice begins to clear the dishes when she informs him that his childhood friend, Philip, wants to visit him. Having been deprived of intellectual company for too long, Bochan allows Philip to visit him. But the next day, Bochan starts to doubt his decision when Alice tells him to stop getting all soft on her. As Bochan regains his confidence, Alice tries to take off his hat, but Bochan stops her by saying that he likes to hide his boy haircut behind his hat. Bochan begins to dress for the meeting when he tells Alice how after he got cursed, his family and friends started to avoid him, but Philip was not like the rest as his behavior did not change. When the time to meet Philip arrives, Bochan's day is ruined and his disappointment is immeasurable.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
After realizing that Philip has become like the rest, Bochan coldly asks him what he's here for. As Philip explains he's here to see him, Bochan accidentally touches a vase, causing the flowers to wither away. Witnessing this, Philip decides to leave earlier than expected, but asks Alice to show him to the lavatory before he goes. Once Philip is away from Bochan's sight, he urges Alice to come with him, warning her that staying with Bochan is dangerous. Suddenly, Bochan appears, startling Philip, who calls him a monster. Collecting himself, Philip admits he didn't want to visit, but felt compelled to inform Bochan that his family plans to name his younger brother as their official heir. And knowing his family, this means they will cut all ties with Bochan. After a brief apology, Philip quickly leaves, swearing to never set foot in the mansion again. That night, Bochan confides in Alice, admitting that when she's not with him, his mind is filled with depressing thoughts. He continues, revealing that he will never know the warmth of her body or the coldness of her tears. Before Bochan can continue on, Alice stops him and tells Bochan that she is going to be his goth mommy for eternity to come. With that, she walks past him, stating that she wants to help him break this curse. Hearing this, Bochan vows to one day put a ring on that finger. The following day, Rob the butler returns to the manor and apologizes to Bochan and Alice for taking a long break. Bochan waves it off and tells Rob to just make sure Alice stays in line. However, the senile man just smiles and tells Bochan that the two of them look breedable. With that, Rob returns to work, which amazes Bochan as he notes how even with one foot in the grave, Rob can cook, clean, and twerk better than Miley Cyrus. From the window, Bochan observes Rob working diligently and tells Alice how Rob has been like a father to him. Hearing this, Alice tells Bochan that his mother probably did get her cheeks clapped by the butler, so who knows. Feeling frustrated by Alice's antics, Bochan tells Rob to just take that hoe away from his sight so he can focus on his book. Entertaining Bochan's order, Rob asks Alice to come along. But before leaving, Alice flashes her strong thighs so Bochan can have something to think about in her absence. Later on, as Bochan strolls through the hallway just because he can, just then Rob appears and is about to touch Bochan in places that will enhance his humor. But unfortunately, he moves away just in time. It turns out that he mistook Bochan for Alice. Yet, despite Rob's poor eyesight and hearing, Bochan realizes that the butler is still top of his game when it comes to taking care of the manor. After having that weird interaction with Rob, Bochan sits in front of his piano and starts writing songs. He thinks about how over the years, he has been polishing his skill of songwriting, so if his family does kick into the curb, he would have a way to earn his bread. However, just then Alice arrives and starts teasing Bochan. Fed up by her antics, Bochan tells Alice to go clean the fireplace. Entertaining Bochan's order, Alice bends down next to the fireplace and tells him, "Help me, stepbro, I'm stuck." Sighing, Bochan peers through his piano and admires the way plot God created Alice. Before Bochan can bring Naughty America to Japan, he invites Alice to sit next to him as he plays the piano. Seeing Bochan touch the keys, Alice wishes to be the piano in that moment. After finishing the song, Bochan reveals that he wrote the song for her. Hearing this, Alice smiles and is about to kiss Bochan when she backs away, realizing that Bochan doesn't want to be kissed. The next day, Bochan sits in front of the piano and manifests a good day when he is suddenly greeted by his ugly little sister Viola. With his peace disturbed, Bochan gets mad at Alice for letting Viola enter the mansion without his permission. After regaining his composure, Bochan observes Viola and notes how his sister is the type of woman that ends up alone with a bunch of cats. Like always, Viola teases her brother by asking if he wants to clap the maid's cheeks. When Bochan confirms, Viola tells Bochan that Andrew Tate would be so disappointed in him right now. So to help Bochan become a Sigma that attracts all the fatherless girls, Viola tells him to rope Max so he can get isekai'd into a world where he is hot. When it's time to leave, Viola tells Bochan to break the curse so he can return to their family house. As she departs, Rob comes to greet her. Seeing Rob, Viola turns scarlet. As Bochan observes his sister, he realizes Viola likes her men like her whiskey, old and complex. Later that day, Bochan encounters a black cat, causing him to freak out. After a whole lot of drama, Rob notices a note stuck inside the cat's collar. Upon reading the note, Bochan realizes that the cat was abandoned by her owner like he was. Thankfully, the cat finds a new family, which ignites hope in Bochan's heart. At night, Alice finds Bochan in the ballroom, admiring the moon. As Alice comes to call him for dinner, Bochan reveals how his grandfather and Alice's mother would dance together in this very room. After sharing that bit of history, Bochan asks Alice to dance with him. Accepting his invitation, the young couple sway in perfect harmony, never touching yet close enough to feel the rhythm of each other's hearts. With nothing better to do since he is a nepo baby, Bochan plays snooker with Alice. The terms of the game are pretty simple. The loser has to do anything the winner says. Just when Bochan is about to win the game, Alice uses her womanly charms to distract him, causing Bochan to lose the game. After taking the L, Bochan worries that Alice will make him clap her bussy, but to his surprise, Alice asks him to visit the town with her. Upon asking why, Alice reveals that they have a costume festival going on, which means he can hide his ugly face and relax around people. So later that day, Alice dresses up as a goth mommy while Bochan dons the costume of a plague doctor. However, due to the thickness of the costume, Bochan ends up falling and getting lost. In the meantime, Alice is greeted by a masked woman who mistakes her for her mother, Sharon. When the woman realizes her mistake, she quickly parts away with Alice, leaving her confused. On the other hand, Bochan is stuck with a crying boy who is as lost as him. Suddenly, Bochan sees a piano and starts to play in hopes of consoling the boy. The boy looks at Bochan and tells him that while he wanted some mommy's milkers, this beat slaps too. As Bochan continues to play, the townsfolk start to join the zesty-ass rave. Seeing everyone grinding with wenches, Bochan wonders about Alice when she suddenly appears before him. While cursing around the town with Alice, Bochan learns that the people of the town have heard stories about him and know him as the Death Incarnate. The name upsets Bochan, and he tells Alice that he is just a little guy with a curse. Changing the subject, Alice asks Bochan if they can climb the clock tower. Upon arriving at the top of the tower, Bochan admires the moon when Alice narrates a fairy tale about a princess who fell in love with the moon. As the story goes, the beautiful princess was engaged to be wedded to a handsome prince when a jealous witch took the prince and dropped him off to the moon. With the prince gone, the princess would offer kisses to the moon every night. Hearing the tale, Bochan says how the prince must be banging some avatar-looking hoes in Uranus. Unable to hide his pain with clownery, Bochan tells Alice how they are in the same boat, as even though they are close, he is unable to give her back shots. When Bochan tells Alice that he loves her and is sorry for letting her womb get all dusty, Alice assures Bochan that she will wait for him to raid her womb. After returning from the festival, Bochan heads toward Alice's room when he finds her butt naked.
I'm gonna come. Oh.
Upon consoling himself, Bochan asks Alice to dress modestly. Accepting the orders, Alice puts on some clothes and invites Bochan to her room, revealing how she plans on making him feel good. Thinking it's finally Freaky Friday, Bochan surrenders his free will to the thick goth mommy before him. To Bochan's utter displeasure, Alice asks him to fall asleep. After teasing Bochan a lot, Alice assures him that she will be right by his side. So as Bochan is about to drift to a land where he jingles the junk in Alice's trunk, he tells her to go on a date with him. After a few days, Alice finds herself on a boat with Bochan, who tells Alice that he wanted to show her a meteor shower. Pleased to hear this, Alice expresses her joy at having Bochan all to herself. Unfortunately, the romance is ruined by a gust of wind, which carries Bochan's hat away. As Alice stands to capture the hat, she ends up falling into the river. The sight of anything other than him making Alice wet really gets under Bochan's skin, and he tells Alice that if it wasn't for the darn curse, then he would have made her wetter than the river. Meanwhile, Alice, wanting some action, demands Bochan to kiss her. However, Bochan quickly reminds her that she will die if he kisses her. In response, Alice tells Bochan that to die by his kiss would be an honor. Yet despite all of Alice's insistence, Bochan refuses to kiss her. So in the end, Alice pushes Bochan into the water. With the meteor shower over, Bochan frustratingly reveals how he wanted to confess his feelings, but since the moment is gone now, they should wank alone in their rooms. The following day, Bochan notices how Alice is ignoring him like your crush ignores you. Feeling anxious, Bochan asks Alice if she wants him to do a Charlie Chaplin impersonation for her. But Alice coldly asks Bochan if his mother ignoring him during nipple nectar time finally broke his mind. As Alice turns to leave, Bochan asks her if she is upset about last night. But when Alice tells him that she is fine, Bochan screams in annoyance, saying that he knows when a girl says she is fine, she is never fine. After getting ignored again, Bochan thinks about how if he doesn't get molested by the goth mommy, then he would have to join Reddit for lonely incels. As Bochan continues to observe Alice from afar, a light bulb goes inside his head, and he asks Rob to touch Alice for him. Surprised, Rob asks him if he also wants him to get the cuck chair, prompting Bochan to clarify that he just wants him to touch Alice's forehead. Turns out Bochan's suspicion was right, as Alice was coming down with a cold and wanted to keep him at bay so he would not catch her cold. After bringing Alice to her room, Bochan tells her that he wants to give her moral support. But in response, Alice tells Bochan that she would rather have oral support. After a couple of days, Alice regains her health and is back to molesting Bochan, who is in low spirits due to the snow. In hopes of cheering Bochan, Alice hands him a scarf knitted by her. Upon sniffing the scarf, Bochan notes that it smells just like her bearded clam. After dressing up, the two decide to play in the snow when Rob joins them. During the match of snowball throwing, Bochan sees Alice transform into a cannon and thinks that if she had been in World War II, Japan would have totally won. After an eventful day, Bochan and Alice return to the mansion, where Bochan refuses to take off the scarf. All of a sudden, Alice finds one of her earrings missing and starts to panic, as those earrings belong to her late mother. Seeing Alice worry, Bochan goes out to find the earring. However, due to the strong wind, he ends up fainting in the snow. Meanwhile, a bat fly in the sky notices Bochan's mansion and decides to search for food there. Transforming into a human, the mysterious creature approaches the mansion and finds Bochan lying in the snow. After stirring him awake, the creature asks Bochan what he's doing out in the cold. Bochan tells the stranger that he wants to rise his maid, so he is trying to find her earring. However, due to the cold weather, Bochan ends up fainting again. Seeing how Bochan is trying hard for a maid, the stranger uses fire magic to melt the snow. As Bochan stirs up, the girl hands him Alice's earring and then introduces herself as Cuff the Witch. After inviting Cuff to his manor, Bochan learns that she can't break his curse as it's beyond her power. Cuff is then greeted by Alice and demands to be taken to the bathroom at once. As the girls leave, Bochan wonders if the two of them are scissoring. The mere thought of the naked girls put Bochan in such a good mood that he starts dancing and singing. Suddenly the witch arrives, demanding food. As they sit down for dinner, Cuff reveals how she got separated from her friend and was starving out in the cold. After devouring a ridiculous amount of food, Cuff starts talking about which kind, but admits she doesn't know the witch who cursed him. With that out of the way, Cuff tells Bochan how her kind is regularly hunted by witch hunters, explaining that she and her friend lost their parents to these hunters. She continues, revealing that her father was human, and since she was an anomaly, she was shunned by both witches and humans. After completing her sob story, Cuff sternly tells Bochan that she can talk no more as she is afraid she would air out her dirty laundry. With a slight smile, Cuff longingly expresses that if only her friend was here with her, then she would not need to exhaust her 2 brain cells. Hearing Cuff talk about her friend so fondly, Bochan remarks that she must love the dude. This instantly shuts Cuff up as she hauls her out of the mansion. The next morning, Alice sees the fugly snowman and thinks back on the moments she got bullied for being a maid. It was Bochan that offered her kind words when she was at her lowest, and since then, her affection for the young master just started blossoming. The next day, Viola comes to visit Bochan when she's greeted by Rob. Like always, seeing the boomer, Viola flushes red and dreams about calling him daddy one day. With Rob exiting the room, Bochan instantly teases Viola, who counters by saying age is just a number. Irked by her brother's words, Viola decides to punish him by teasing Alice. So when the maid brings her some sweets, Viola tells her that she lacks a visual charm. Continuing on, Viola states that while Alice does have those badonkers, her face is a 3 at best. After judging her like a Karen, Viola tells Alice that she will help her unleash her true potential.
A few moments later,
Viola orders Alice to show her newly learned expression to Bochan, who instantly starts to simp for her. Wanting to thank Viola for her effort, Bochan urges her to spend some time with Rob by suggesting she help him make the dough. The kitchen instantly becomes a honeymoon suite as Viola starts rizzing up Rob by remarking how they look like a newlywed couple. Similarly, Alice and Bochan get to spend quality time together. From afar, Viola observes her brother and expresses to Rob how Bochan is lucky to have Alice and him as emotional support. She then tells Rob to make sure Bochan straightens up his act, or their younger brother will take over as the family head. Hearing this, Rob thanks Viola and remarks that although she might act like a cold, callous witch, deep down, she truly does love Bochan. Smiling bashfully, Viola leaves for home when Rob comes to hand over the biscuits they made together. As he tells her to come back soon, Viola starts cooking up scenarios straight out of a freaky Wattpad story. The next day, as Alice goes out for ice skating, Bochan sits and admires her from afar. Suddenly, a crow sits next to him and calls Alice a total babe. At first, Bochan thinks he really needs to take his schizo pills because what the hell, but then as the crow continues to talk about Alice's childbearing hips, Bochan realizes he's not completely insane. Turns out the crow is a magic user and Cuff's friend. After skating, Alice approaches the men when the crow transforms into a human and introduces himself as Zane. Bochan observes Zane and tells him to back off from Alice, but Zane boldly calls her cute. He also tells Bochan that he loves women and how they dress up for men, but then Bochan unleashes his inner feminist and blankly tells Zane that the women dress for themselves. As Zane wonders where Cuff has gone off to, Alice reveals a bat nuzzling inside her gazongas. In that moment, the boys behold the sight and dream about getting crushed by a goth mommy's dairy pillows. After taking her human form, Cuff greets Zane and then turns her attention to Bochan and Alice. She asks what they are up to, and upon learning they were ice skating, She demands to try the activity herself. While trying to ice skate, Zane compares Cuff to Alice, stating how Alice is more of a woman than her. Upset at the comment, Cuff tells Zane that if she could go back in time, she would hand his pregnant mother a coat hanger. After fighting like two couples who have kinky in-and-out sessions, Cuff holds Zane's waist and asks him to walk. As he does so, Cuff begins to skate and then invites Alice to join her, who then invites Bochan. When it's time to leave, Cuff and Zane tell Bochan that they will take him to a gathering of witches called the Witches Sabbath on the next blood moon. As Bochan expresses surprise, Zane explains that since they can't tell him anything about witches, they will take him to the gathering so he can investigate who put the curse on him. And if you were to run into any trouble, then it's rest in peace, my friend. The following night, Alice is greeted by Viola, who reveals how she wanted to sleep with Rob, but Bochan told her to stop acting like a wench maid for the cobblestone. Huffing in annoyance, Viola cuddles with Alice, and the two girls talk about their love lives. Viola confides that her mother never loved her, and she always wished to be pampered by someone. With that, she drifts off to sleep. Moments later, Bochan arrives and finds Alice cuddling with Viola. Before he can wake Viola, Alice tells Bochan to pamper his little sister so she does not develop an unhealthy obsession with plushies and rough bang bang. In the mood to do some reading, Bochan arrives at the conservatory only to find it completely hijacked by vines and trees. Without missing a beat, he asks Alice to get down and dirty, prompting the maid to whip out a bunch of gardening tools from her cleavage like a magician pulling rabbits from hat. Wanting to give Alice a helping hand, Bochan uses the power of his curse to eat the unwanted trees. As he does so, he reflects on how the witch placed certain conditions on him. He can eat anything that comes into direct contact with him, but touching through thick clothes won't be lethal. It was then clear to Bochan that the witch wanted him to live under her control, and she succeeded in doing so. Breaking his chain of thoughts, Bochan checks on Alice, who had been admiring the flowers. Alice asks him to terminate the flowers as she has grown tired of them and walks away. Knowing that Alice is a cheap copy of Morticia Addams, Bochan makes her a garland of dead flowers as a symbol of his love. As Alice breaks into a smile, Bochan asserts to himself that he won't be under the witch's spell for long as he plans on finding clues about her in the Sabbath. This way, he will be able to not only clap Alice's cheeks, but also get accepted by his mother. Later that night, as Bochan paces around the hallways, he hears Alice's scream. Upon checking, he discovers that a cat has run off with Alice's gown, leaving her as a naked damsel in distress. Without further thinking, Bochan announces to help Alice in her predicament. Of course, during their mission, Alice does her best to tease Bochan, prompting him to tell Alice,
I do not wish to be horny anymore.
Soon enough, Bochan locates the gown but finds it all chewed up. This makes Alice rather sad as she received compliments by Bochan on that particular dress. After a couple of days, Cuff and Zane arrive at the manor, ready to take Bochan to the Witches' Sabbath. While Bochan finds himself freaking out about attending a witch's tea party, Alice remains calm and collected as always. Zane and Cuff arrive in the room, and seeing Bochan armed with murder weapons, tell him to take a chill pill. They'd assure him that he'll be fine as long as the witches don't find out he's human. Seeing the witches cooperate with him, Bochan finds himself wondering why Cuff and Zane are going all the way to help him. Shaking away his thoughts, Bochan takes the cape from Zane that'll help him mask his scent. Once everything is set in motion, Zane opens up a portal allowing Bochan and Alice to enter the witchy realm. Seeing the superhuman creatures, Bochan pisses his pants. Soon enough, a masked witch addresses everyone for an attendance check. As Bochan observes his surroundings, Zane informs him that the masked witch, Daleth, is their leader. Seeing Zane whispering with a stranger, Daleth asks who he has brought along. Despite wanting to say something clever, Cuff ends up announcing that the two newcomers are actually her and Zane's kids. Amid the cheering from the fellow witches, Daleth commences the Sabbath. After yapping endlessly, Daleth ends the Sabbath, much to Bochan's dismay. With nothing to do, Alice approaches Daleth, who greets her by name. It turns out she is the stranger Alice met during the festival. When Alice asks Daleth if she knew her mother, Daleth cryptically reveals that she was briefly acquainted with her. Bochan joins the conversation and is also recognized by Daleth, who reveals that she knew the witch who placed the curse on him. Upon further inquiry, Bochan learns that the witch who cursed him has perished. When he probes Daleth for more answers, Daleth becomes angry, tells Bochan that she hated that witch and burns his cloak, causing all the witches to chase him and Alice. Seeing the tides turning against them, Zane opens a portal, allowing Bochan and Alice to escape safely. After arriving back at the mansion, Bochan asks the witches why they decided to help him. Cuff reveals that when she met him and saw how dedicated he was to Alice, she decided to be friends with him. Hearing this, Bochan becomes happy and tells Zane and Cuff that they are always welcome at his mansion. The following day, Bochan comes across a pot that resembles you. When he asked Alice what an unpleasant thing like that is doing at their mansion, Alice reveals that it's a magic pot which was crafted by a witch. As she excitedly reveals a recipe book, Bochan fails to see the charm in such an outlandish item. Alice then states that she will be making a love potion for Bochan and forces him to participate with her. As the two get down to cooking, Alice reveals to Bochan that the magic pot is actually a talking pot and comes with extra features too. This makes Bochan wonder if he can put his Princess Sophia inside the pot's mouth and get a very nice sloppy toppy. As he puts his idea into action, the room gets covered in smoke for privacy reasons. Later on, Alice asks Bochan to stir the pot, and once he is done, Alice reveals that this is no love potion, but actually an alleged remedy to break the curse. Touched by this, Bochan tries the atrocity cooked by him and Alice. However, upon testing, they learn that the curse is still in full effect. This doesn't upset Bochan as he tells Alice that he had expected this, much since Daleth told him how the curse would be hard to break. In the end, Bochan decides to give the magic pot to Old Man Rob as an alternative for Pocket Bussy. From the corner of the room, Bochan notices Viola sending the pot death glares, causing him to worry about the pot's safety. Later that day, Alice hands Bochan a music sheet by an artist called MacFarlane and reveals that anyone who plays the tune correctly can get rid of any curse, but if they fail to play the tune right, then they will go insane. Despite being skeptical, Bochan starts playing the tune when suddenly the ghost of MacFarlane appears in front of him. As Bochan converses with MacFarlane, Alice wonders if he has gone insane, and when he tries to explain, MacFarlane reveals to Bochan that only the performer can see his ghost. His attention then turns towards Alice, and he tells Bochan how back in the good days when slavery wasn't abolished, he would clap his maids left and right. As MacFarlane tries to get freaky with Alice, the maid coldly rejects him by saying that she only lets Casper the friendly ghost in, not a white misogynist. Heartbroken by this, MacFarlane tries to distract Bochan, but in the end the young master successfully plays the tune, causing MacFarlane to disappear like a fart in the air. When the curse still doesn't leave Bochan, he ends up screaming in frustration. The next day, Bochan knocks on Alice's door and finds her in a revealing outfit. Flustered by this, he closes the door and wonders if Alice even sees him as a man. Bochan then recalls how Viola told him that in order to woo a woman you must quicken her heartbeat. With that thought in mind, Bochan tries to scare Alice by showing her a painting of a woman crying bloody tears. However, in the end, Bochan ends up getting scared, causing him to accidentally bump into a vase that just happens to be very dear to Rob. Seeing the butler exhibit a deadly aura, Bochan goes into hiding. Upon being joined by Alice in the closet, the two decide to hide underneath the bed when Alice tells Bochan how hide and seek was originally a game for adults. After teasing Bochan a little, Alice asks him if he wants to grow up. Sighing, Bochan reveals how he does want to start drinking alcohol, so he can beat her cheeks without feeling guilty later. This makes Alice smile a lot, as she tells Bochan that she just got a heartbeat in her nether regions. Flustered, Bochan smiles and thinks how he managed to riz Alice in the end. Suddenly, Rob seeks them out and tells Bochan that since he broke the vase, he discovered some lost jewelry in the soil and reveals how back in the days, servants would steal jewelry from his mother and grandmother and hide it in the flower pot. So thanks to Bochan, they managed to retrieve valuable heirlooms. The very next day, Bochan and the rest are visited by Cuff, who is trying to show Zane that she is not a total moron by learning alphabets. Unfortunately, when she struggles to learn the alphabets, everybody comes to realize that Cuff is a product of incest. Wanting to change the subject, Bochan asks Cuff where Zane is, and the witch excitedly reveals how he is at the circus. Surprised, Bochan asks Cuff if Zane has started pursuing his career in clownery. So Cuff reveals that since they look pretty messed up, joining a circus was their best career option. Back at Bochan's family residence, Walter rizzes up all the maids, prompting Viola to remark how he is like Jungkook from Wish. Ignoring Viola's backhanded compliment, Walter asks her if she is going to see their cursed brother, but Viola retorts back saying it's none of his beeswax. Walter then reminds Viola how he will soon inherit everything. In retaliation, Viola tells Walter that their older brother might break the curse and get named as the Hare instead. This upsets Walter so much that he starts twerking in depression. Later on, Walter reveals to Viola how he hates Bochan for being born first. Before leaving for Bochan's place, Viola tells Walter to cut or dye his hair to cope with his misery. However, upon arriving, Viola is greeted by Cuff and wonders if she is a burglar. Wanting to receive head pats from Rob, Viola tries to apprehend Cuff, only to get smacked by her huge airbags. Reeling from the recoil, Viola curses her mother for being built like a board. In the meantime, Cuff interprets Viola's actions as a child needing some attention. After a lot of struggle, Viola manages to tie up the witch, but to her dismay, Cuff remains unbothered. As the two girls get to talking, Cuff tells Viola that she is a lot like Bochan, which upsets her. Suddenly, Bochan, Alice, and Rob enter the room. Seeing Viola on top of Cuff, the gang decides to leave the room before they get soaked in their squirt. Later that night, Alice and Bochan bond over a game of chess, when Alice remarks how snowstorms remind her of the first time she entered this place. Jumping back in the past, Rob enters Bochan's room and finds it destroyed again. Ignoring the gloomy environment, Rob announces that he has hired a new maid for him. As Bochan sees Alice, he gets riled up and tells her to leave at once. However, instead of being fearful of the young master's rage, Alice tries to remind him how they have known each other since childhood. Unfortunately, this further upsets Bochan, who tells Alice that he doesn't want to be reminded of his past. The next day, Bochan grows more hostile towards Alice and demands her to clean his wreckage of a room in 3 days or else she will be fired. Once again, Alice, realizing that Bochan is on her man periods, takes no offense to his cruelty and decides to clean the room. Alone in the gloomy room, Alice picks up the broken pieces of glass and recalls how Bochan used to be warm-hearted during his childhood. The next day, Alice happily greets Bochan, who is visibly surprised after learning that Alice cleaned the entire room in one night. At that moment, Bochan realizes how unkind he has been to Alice and starts to weep. And like always, Alice remains by his side. As Bochan realizes that Alice will not leave him alone, he decides to leave himself. Walking in the snowy night, alone and cold, Bochan finds his head filled with emo thoughts. He curses the witch who cursed and deprived him of love. Suddenly, Bochan ends up falling down and finds his body too hard to move. So as he lies there, waiting for death, he finally remembers Alice and wishes to see her one last time. All of a sudden, Alice appears before his eyes, but then Bochan decides to go all emo on Alice and tells her that he wants to die. Finding herself at wit's end, Alice throws snowballs at Bochan and tells him how he is selfish for wanting death and leaving behind those that love him. With that, Alice reveals to Bochan how when they were kids, she was a frail child, but it was him who showed her kindness when she needed it the most. In the end, Bochan decides to leave his dream of becoming Chester Bennington and returns home with Alice. With the arrival of Christmas Eve, Viola asks Bochan and Alice if she should let Rob deflower her as a Christmas present. In response, Alice tells her to settle for a handkerchief, which Viola thankfully agrees on. Alice helps Bochan get ready when she teasingly tells him how she wishes to spend the eve alone with him. Right on that note, Bochan hurries to tell his staff to lock the doors so that he can be with Alice alone. Seeing Bochan simp so hard for her, Alice laughs and reminds him that Cuff and Zane will be making an appearance later tonight. After learning that they will be having a Christmas party, Bochan worries that his wanking addiction would get noticed by everyone. To assure Bochan, Alice tells him to embrace himself and become the greatest wanker the world has ever seen. In the meantime, Viola gets an earful from her mother as Gerbera tells her that she has the fashion sense of a colorblind pimp. Hearing this, Viola's little heart breaks, and she immediately decides to spend Christmas with Bochan and Rob. Seeing his sister choose Bochan over him again, Walter disguises himself as the carriage driver, determined to see Bochan's place for himself. Back at the mansion, Alice and Bochan are greeted by Zane and Cuff, who have brought along a tree. As Cuff excitedly expresses how she is eager to see Santa Claus, Bochan realizes she is just like the girl who believes her boyfriend will marry her. Once the girls start decorating the tree, Zane confides in Bochan that he finds Cuff cute. Realizing that Zane has feelings for her, Bochan encourages him to express how he feels. After receiving sound advice from Bochan, Zane decides to compliment Cuff only to find her sleeping. Later that night, as Viola runs inside, she ends up dropping her present for Rob. Walter picks it up and thinks that the present is for Bochan, which fills him with extreme fury. Sneaking in, Walter finds the mansion empty and thinks that Bochan must be a miserable loser, which automatically makes him better than him. He then comes across a Santa Claus's costume and decides to wear it when suddenly Cuff appears all excited. Believing Walter to be Santa, Cuff eagerly demands her gift, prompting Walter to hand over Viola's present to her. Excited by this, Cuff decides to be Santa's little helper and ends up dropping Walter into the chimney. As Walter makes a less than smooth landing, Everyone present in the lawn freezes in shock until Viola recognizes him and calls Walter out. Suddenly, Cuff enters the room carrying the present, which leads to a brawl between her and Viola, who demands her present back. In the meantime, Walter confronts Bochan, stating how he has lived an easy life, while each day he was told how replaceable he is. Before talking sense to his brother, Bochan decides to solve the quarrel between the girls, which had escalated quickly. After solving the issue between the girls and receiving Viola's gratitude, Bochan gets challenged by Walter, who declares that the first one to uncover the truth about his curse will inherit the family title, while the loser will remain a soy boy for eternity. As Bochan accepts the challenge like a man, Walter tries to make a cool ending, but ends up making a fool out of himself. Fortunately, the rest of the party gets wrapped up smoothly, and when everyone leaves, Alice demands a kiss underneath the mistletoe. Unable to digest Alice's request, Bochan ends up tripping, which gives Alice the upper hand to tease him further. As Bochan tells Alice how she saved him all those years ago, Alice reciprocates his feelings by telling him how she intends to live her life with him forever. Back when Alice wasn't a pathetic orphan loser, she would admire how her mother, Sharon, was well-liked by everyone in the mansion. This made young Alice happy, but what made her really happy was catching a glimpse of Bochan. Sharon, noticing her daughter has a crush, teases her and tells Alice that she would support her love. In the present, Alice clutches her mother's locket as she remembers some fond memories of the past. The following day, Zane observes Cuff from afar, all because Viola told him that Cuff is becoming a total nincompoop as he takes care of her too much. In the meantime, Cuff buys some fruits from a local vendor, but when it's time to pay, she ends up telling the lady to exchange the fruits for a cat-shaped stone. Watching this scene from afar, Zane realizes that Cuff really did grow up in Sweet Home, Alabama. After some trial and a lot of errors, Cuff manages to make a purchase without getting into trouble. Seeing this, Zane celebrates a little when suddenly, Cuff encounters a kid who tries to steal her money. Cuff instantly apprehends the boy, but during a slight tussle, the kid is about to fall when Cuff instantly lunges to protect him. As the kid apologizes for his behavior, Cuff lovingly assures him that everything is fine, but then worries about all the fallen fruits. On that note, Zane steps out of the shadows and helps Cuff out. Later that night, Alice finds Bochan roaming the hallways sleeplessly. Seeing how the young master is uneasy, Alice tells Bochan that she will help him sleep by getting into bed with him.
Damn good deal.
Before Bochan could tell Alice that he will lose all his sleep with her next to him, Alice leaves to get her PJs. After getting into bed with Alice, Bochan tells the maid how thanks to her, he now has a stiffy. This only encourages Alice to further tease Bochan. As she tries to strip in front of him, Bochan panics and tells Alice that two unwedded people shouldn't be in bed together. After buttoning up her clothes, Alice asks Bochan how he feels about his mother. Recalling old memories of Gerbera, Bochan tells Alice that he used to have a strong dislike for her, but now he wants to break the curse and tell his mother about their love. With that, Bochan also states that if her mother disapproves of their relationship, then he would break ties with his family, but Alice cuts him off, saying that he must refrain from doing such a thing. Bochan then tells Alice that all of this is a distant future, as he needs to first break the curse. Feeling sleepy, Bochan tells Alice that he can't wait to see her in his dreams, and in response, Alice tells Bochan that she would be there to clean up his sticky sheets in the morning. The next day, Bochan runs to show off his mittens to Rob, revealing how Alice knitted them for him. Smiling at Bochan, Rob comments how he has really grown from his days of listening to My Chemical Romance. As Bochan goes back inside the house, Rob thinks back to a time when the young master had just gotten cursed. It wasn't that he was afraid of Bochan, it was just that he had never raised a child before. Initially, Rob had accepted the job as an honor since Bochan was the precious firstborn, but as time went by, the young master became more rowdy and angsty. At that moment, Rob realized that what Bochan really needed was a hoe to play with his magic mic. This prompted him to seek out Alice, who at the time had been living with her abusive aunt. Rob's decision to introduce Alice would later turn out to be in Bochan's favor. In present time, Rob feels bad for Alice as he recalls a conversation from last night when Alice confided in him how she doesn't want Bochan to break ties with his family because of her. Later that night, after playing the piano, Bochan tells Alice how he has been more cheerful because of her. As he expresses his determination to break the curse and take her away, Alice tells Bochan that it's time for her to retire to her room. While walking back to her room, Alice sighs sadly as she thinks about the fateful day when Bochan would break his curse, and she will have to break ties with him, because in the end, she is but a maid. At the Maid mansion, Viola tries to find clues on how to break Bochan's curse, but gets bugged by Walter, who is determined to win the challenge against his older brother. Seeing how Viola is determined to help Bochan, Walter once again begins to twerk in sadness. In the meantime, Viola discovers a servant's logbook and decides to take it up to her room when she stumbles across Gerbera. At once, Gerbera tells the servants to dress Viola in anything other than an e-girl's outfit. Moments later, Viola comes to Gerbera's room, wearing a fugly dress. As she complains about being draped in curtains, Gerbera further traumatizes her in hopes of injecting humor into Viola's character. After getting emotionally sucker-punched, Viola runs to Bochan's mansion and directs a series of insults towards Gerbera. At once, Bochan reprimands Viola and tells her that she looks good in her dress, but that Alice tells him that it's more than a dress for Viola. All of a sudden, Viola starts whining and tells Bochan that she is moving into the mansion with him effective immediately. When Bochan denies her wish, Viola begs him and even tells Bochan that she is ready to work as a maid for him. Suddenly, Rob enters the room and compliments Viola, causing her to forget all about her despair. Later that night, Viola announces that she is calling a girl's sleepover. Upon entering the maid's quarters, Alice and Viola are greeted by Cuff. With one more added member, the girls start talking about love when they realize they are all going to die with a cucumber and a few fur babies. Suddenly, Viola chimes in, revealing that she got Alice a servant's logbook which might help her break Bochan's curse. As the girls lie down in one bed, Alice begins to giggle with happiness at having girlfriends. Unbeknownst to them, Dalit spies on them and decides to make a move. So without further ado, she calls Zane and asks him to deliver a message to his dear friends. The next day, Alice reads the servant's logbook when she is joined by Rob, who comes to sit next to her. As Alice continues to inspect the book, her eyes widen as she reads about her mother mentioning 2 nuns visiting the mansion. Realizing that those nuns were likely witches, Alice quickly asks Rob if he remembers the event. When Rob denies recalling such an event, Alice hunches her shoulders in dejection. All of a sudden, Zane appears in the room carrying Dalit's message. With Bochan present in the room, Alice learns that Dalit wants to be friends. As the two express confusion over such a message, Zane explains that in witch terminology, Dalit is asking them to stop delving into the world of witches. After assuring Bochan and Alice that he and Cuff are on their side, Zane asks Bochan for a boys' hangout. However, during the night, he sneaks out and steals Alice's logbook. It turns out, Dalit had tasked Zane to get rid of the old book, fearing it might reveal something about her. Initially, Zane had refused, but then Dalit threatened him with Cuff's life, causing him to submit. In the present, as Zane is about to burn the logbook, Bochan arrives, prompting Zane to reveal the full truth. With the cat out of the bag, Zane hands the logbook to Bochan, stating that even though he would do anything for Cuff, it feels wrong to be a hurdle in his path. Hearing this, Bochan smiles and tells Zane to burn the book as he doesn't want anything bad happening to his friends. As Zane finds himself getting soft, he cracks a joke, but then tells Bochan how Dalit has been watching him and Alice for a long time. Without going into more details, Zane disintegrates the logbook, saving only a piece of it. He then informs Bochan that with his magic, they can piece back the book, and when the time is right, they can uncover its content. After accepting Zane's plan, Bochan, the magic user, make a whole show of convincing Dalit that the book is long gone. Elsewhere in the witch realm, Dalit smiles in victory, and then raises a coffin revealing Sharon's body. Having been invited to the main residence, Bochan expresses his fears to Alice, revealing how he didn't want to meet Gerbera before breaking his curse. Seeing Bochan worry so much, Alice tells him that she would like to tag along. Feeling a little relaxed now, Bochan makes up his mind to tell Gerbera about his relationship with Alice. Upon arriving at their destination, Bochan and Alice are greeted by Viola, who informs Bochan that he must see their mother immediately. After telling Bochan good luck, Alice goes to visit the servants while he enters the mansion and is met by anxious servants. As Viola guides Bochan to their mother's room, Walter reveals that he babbled to Gerbera how Viola has been going to his place. Bochan assures Walter that he will deal with their mother, which only frustrates Walter. However, upon entering the room, Gerbera sternly tells Bochan that they will have a conversation yesterday. Feeling nervous, Bochan exits the room only to learn that this was Gerbera being kind. In the meantime, Alice is warmly welcomed by the servants. While walking towards her mother's room, Alice is greeted by Gerbera, who accidentally mistakes her for Sharon. However, upon realizing her mistake, Gerbera hurries away. Alice then learns that Sharon and Gerbera used to be total BFFs. After learning that Gerbera used to be a happier person with Sharon around, Alice retires to her old chambers, where she is visited by Bochan. Alice asks him how his conversation with Gerbera went, and Bochan reveals that she is the same old mean hag that she was. After talking about everyone else, Bochan tells Alice how he missed her. However, when he is unable to kiss her, Bochan goes crazy and decides to just sleep it off. The next day, Viola takes Bochan to the place where he was cursed. Seeing the place, Bochan begins to recall how it was springtime, and it was out in the garden looking for a clover to give to Alice when suddenly, someone grabbed him from behind, and before he knew it, he was cursed. After remembering his wretched past, Bochan and Viola decide to head inside when they are greeted by Gerbera, who as always sucks the life out of everyone around. Once she leaves, Viola tells Bochan that he is lucky to be living away from Gerbera. Later at dinner, Gerbera tells Bochan that he has till spring to break the curse, and if he fails, Walter will be named as the head of the family. After accepting Gerbera's decision, Bochan tries to talk about Alice, but Gerbera cuts him off and tells Bochan that since he is born in aristocracy, he is not allowed to love a disgusting maid. This upsets Bochan so much that he yells at Gerbera for always treating her kids with disregard. After telling Gerbera that he would call CPS on her, Bochan announces that he will marry Alice and leaves, prompting Viola and Walter to follow after him. Bochan leaves the main residence, gaining his siblings' appreciation, and upon returning home, he tells Alice how he loves her. Once he drifts off to sleep, Alice whispers in his ears that she too loves him. Do you think Bochan will be able to break his curse? Let us know by commenting. Thick thighs save lives. And if you like anime recaps, then watch this video here.